back to another week of the DP World Tour picks and bets. Skylar, Hoke here. Thankfully, have survived the last craziness of the week of Hurricane Ian in Florida. Hearts go out to those who were, really affected and devastated over the storm from the last week. Thankfully, a little bit south of where I am at, so I ended up quite fortunate. But like I said, heart goes out. Lots of thoughts and prayers to everyone down there. Tom, how we doing across the pond?
Yeah, really good. I'd just like to echo obviously what you said there. A lot of thoughts for you guys over there. Obviously, it was good to hear from you kind of late over the weekend to say that you were safe, and it was always good to keep in touch. But obviously, we know other people have been less fortunate. But over here, all good. Really positive. Back to the golf, I guess. Like the Dunhill Links was, it felt like we had a few chances, right, and then we just didn't, and they just never really materialised. And I don't know where the fault lies. Like, I felt like Rasmus Højgaard had a chance, and then he's kind of missed a putt. I think it was in like 12, like a short putt, and that was his race run. As much as Fox was brilliant off a tour meniscus with someone else's clubs and things like that, like he was brilliant. It definitely felt like one we know about Richard Mansell. We don't need to say too much on that, but even like Rory McIlroy and Alex Noren, both you'd expect to have actually put a little bit more pressure on Fox. I know Rory obviously came with a late charge, as he so often does, but it felt like he still had better chances than he actually displayed in the end.
Yeah, I didn't get to see much besides leaderboards, but yeah, it's just, I guess from the way the results said, it is one that's pretty forgetful in my head in that sense. But
Yeah.
I guess I would take positives out of it if your golfers or the ones that you're interested in or maybe were on played well. But for many, with the wave splits, with the way Friday and Saturday worked out, like I think it's one that you can throw away or not concern yourself with as much from form perspective when we hop back on it. It's going to be evident in some of the selections this week.
Yeah, like for me, like I was very much in the same boat. Like if you want to use it to further your case, great. But especially with like, so you've had Wentworth, the French Open, and Dunhill Links, Italian Open as well. Like all very prestigious events, all tough events for different reasons. And I feel like now we're getting to a course where we can get some sort of specialists back in. There's going to be a buzzword sort of later on in the show that we'll probably use a couple of times, or I definitely will. Like that there's certain players that can kind of perform on these types of golf courses that I don't necessarily think suit links golf. I don't think necessarily suit the tough test of France. Don't necessarily suit, like anyone can miss the cut at Wentworth. So like I think yes, you don't want someone that's been losing 10 strokes off the tee every week, but like if someone's been playing okay and has some good course form here or has shown signs on these sort of golf courses, then I think you can definitely go back to the well with them.
Yeah, I am total agreement with you there. And yeah, it's always fun to kind of dig through the tea leaves and maybe find a thing or two versus just kind of specific form. I don't want to say we're gonna skip the top because you can't really. It's unavoidable to discuss here. We have John Rahm coming back over playing and looking to tie. I think it's tie now, right? Sevy's record of most Open de Espana victories. He's come over here and purely dominated, and then he's also had a chance to win. Looked like he was going to run away with things in the last event here, and ended up finishing 17th after kind of a blow up on Saturday. So he's plus 300, plus 275, plus 240 now is the longest at DraftKings Sportsbook actually, and then Fleetwood plus 850. So I don't think we need to discuss whether or not we're taking or what it's going to be with them. We're betting with places. We know there's a very, very good chance that these two, specifically Rahm, is going to find himself in the mix, and you're going to have to really take it to the wire to beat one of these two incredible talents. But we dig in a deeper down the board for us. Now, Tom, I opened up Monday morning to a message from you saying how much. The question isn't who we're going to bet. It is how much is Tristan Lawrence going to win this tournament by? So tell us why he's your standalone favorite bet of the week.
Yeah, so for me, like I think actually, and even by myself, right, I think that Tristan Lawrence's year has actually been overlooked a little bit. Like I think a lot of that has come down to the fact that the Joburg Open win was in a shortened event. And I think people can kind of pass it off as a little bit of a fluke, right? Then he kind of follows that up with the Amoga European Masters win over Matt Wallace in a playoff. Both of those kind of have some relevance, and then the buzzword that we're going to use here is altitude. Now, We'll have to preface this a little bit that like the altitude here in Spain is nowhere near what they kind of face in South Africa and even what they face Cransessier. But there is a pattern of guys that have played well in those kind of conditions, doing well here. And when you look at the fact that Charles Schwartzel and Richard Sterney have both won on this golf course, there is a sort of South African contingent, right? And then you look at the fact that Wilco Nine was sixth last year, Justin Harding and Xander de Lombard are both seventh in 2019, and there's a pattern emerging right now. Yes, that could be coincidental. They were in decent form at the time. They were, they just like the golf course. You can, I think, overpower it and have a good touch around the greens, which is certainly what I'm hoping Tristan Lawrence basically does, and that's his approach. Hasn't played here yet, but a win, a second, a third, and 3 more top 10s in 2022. Like, that is an incredible season. And yes, he missed the cut of the Dunhill Links, but as we've kind of just run through, not too concerned about that. Certainly don't expect him to play that well in Scotland generally. And then he was inside the top 8 for both strokes gained approach and tees to green in France. So I think for someone that can hit it long and tidy up around the greens, and just while before we were coming on, like, just some extra stats. Like, he's 7th on tour in terms of birdies per round. When you look at the fact that he's actually had 370 rounds, the people above him, George Coetzee 287 rounds, Rory McIlroy 154 rounds, Ryan Fox 295. No one's had the same amount of rounds and kind of made the birdie averages that he has, which kind of suggests that he's the best on tour already in terms of birdie average. Eagles not so much, but still not far away. And then par 5 performance again inside the top 10, and those above him nowhere near the same amount of rounds. So to me, like, he's just the best profile for that kind of scoring conditions. I think we're going to get that at this golf course. We haven't got the evidence that he can play well here, but I see no reason where he's played well. I think Crans and the Joburg Open both come into play here.
Yeah, I'm with you on Tristan Lawrence this week, and a lot of your reasoning, was built into kind of that thoughts. And I think a 3-week stretch of the year that gets underlooked was the Irish Open, the Scottish Open, and the Open Championship. And I would say, looking back on that, Tristan Lawrence was probably in the top 3 or 4 players on the DP World Tour who played that very, very well. Another one was Dean Burmeister. What did Dean Burmeister do last week? Finished 4th on the PGA Tour after he flew through Korn Ferry Tour finals. What did Tristan Lawrence do coming out of that? He won an event 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. Like, some of those guys during that same stretch of golf played the 2 PGA Tour events stateside and showed out well. Like, that 3-week stretch of golf was, like, realistically to me the best time that these guys got to weigh, or we got to see them against the talent that represents there. And those, if it's not consistent, that's okay. It builds into this number here. It's a very good number for somebody we know can win. So I'm with you on Tristan Lawrence. I'm going to go back to the well here for me, to a golfer that, if I'm throwing out last week, Yannick Paul did not show up like I wanted him to. He did have some of those similar linksy-ish finishes, like strong finishes on the Challenge Tour. But I just think, profiling aside, like Yannick himself, I truly trust in his talent. And I trust that he is one of the better players on tour. And he's priced correctly. He's 37-1 is the longest, you can find him here stateside. But again, he comes off that 8th, the Kazoo Open, which he played extremely well, had a good Korn Ferry Tour championship, had a strong Barracuda and Barbasol, top 20s both there. I just think Yannick, like Tristan, that year has been slept on overall. And what's obviously separating is he did not get a win yet, but I just think so highly of Yannick Paul that I just want to keep betting him.
Yeah, so I had a sort of discussion with Bradley Todd about this on the podcast yesterday. Both Yannick Paul and Marcus Hellekelder he likes, and really you're just backing the upside of those golfers. I know Jeff kind of says that on Pat's show, right? That like sometimes you're just betting a number because they can win. And I truly believe both of those guys. More so Yannick Paul at the moment. I think he's more consistent, but Hellekelder's definitely shown some stuff as well. I think for me, like, the most impressive thing about Yannick is that, like, he's done it, crossing both tours, right? Like, he's been to the Korn Ferry, he's been in Monday qualifiers, he's been, trying to sort of cement status on both sides, which when we hear from any sort of golfer, one of the biggest challenges is keeping your card on both sides, let alone trying to chase one on each side. So really impressive what he's done. Is the number fair? I don't know what price you can make him, right? Like, I think it's one of those ones where, like, it doesn't scream value to me, but by the same token, like, if you believe in Yannick Paul, like you very evidently do, and I do as well. Like, I think we both, even when we were backing him at the start of the season as a prospect, he was only like 80-1 because he was coming off a decent challenge tour victory. Now he's proven it again. I don't know how you can make him much bigger.
Yeah, he's an odd one. And I do think, to your point, you mentioned with Tristan Lawrence, and we're seeing South African success here. I do love looking at kind of that location form. And Yannick Paul is one of the better players in Spain, at a top 10 earlier at the Catalonia Championship. Now, I'm not just saying there's corollaries from the courses perspective, because this one's just definitely a little bit different. But top 10 earlier in Spain this year. Tristan Lawrence also has had strong events kind of in Spain too. So I think that's just a more feather in the cap when it talks through kind of these guys here. I've got another selection. Yeah, I got another one that I want to go into. And this is kind of where I struggled a little bit, because I don't necessarily think there is a perfect angle of the course. Club de Campavia, in 2022 or 2021, the last time we saw it, had a different leaderboard than it was in the past. It was very dominated by distance guys, it felt like. I mean, Rafa isn't built on distance, but I mean, Wilco's up there, Besseling, a really good driver, is there. We see, I said Wilco. The one, though, I guess, Adri Arnas, a second and a fourth place finish. Like, it has an ability, if you can couple with a short game and get yourself, because you've got to score in the par fives. We saw that success. You mentioned that with Tristan. One golfer that did that is coming in with some trending form, playing well in the downhill links, kind of a feather in the cap to at least somebody who did perform there, is Grant Forrest. Grant Forrest, a winner on tour last year. I don't find him to be someone I would consider consistent, in the manner, but like Forrest, I think has, again, upside. I struggle with this number. I'm betting him because I do feel like there are spots where we've seen him pop multiple times that this can really correlate to. He's done it here in the past. I like him. I like him a lot, but the number is troubling for me. I'm going to still stick with it at 40-1, but like I really debated him versus, I mean, if you wanted to go deeper, is his game that much different than Heli Kilda? Is his game that much different than Wilco Nienaberst? Is his game, if you want to go shorter, why wouldn't you just bet Minwoo Lee at 30-1? Because Minwoo shows the flashes way ahead of that, but zero consistency there either. Forrest kind of felt that middle ground where I just kind of plant the flag and go with him for the week.
And I actually think Forrest is a little bit more consistent than we maybe give him credit for as well. Like third at the Kazoo Classic, 41st at the Hero Open, missed the cut at the Kazoo Open, fine, doesn't really matter. 23rd at the Czech Masters, but it was actually 7th after the rounds 1 and 2. And then obviously had to kind of push it on that third day because it was shortened, finished 23rd. Then he finishes 62nd in Himmerland, but again, he opened with a 66, so a nice start. 23rd at the BMW, he was 16th after round 2, couldn't really get it going in the final day. Misses the cut at the Italian Open, then he comes back at France, 7th at the halfway stage, 10th last week at Dunhill Links. Like, no, there's not 4 rounds of consistency, but basically every event that he's entering at the moment, he is there. And then you top in the fact that he's obviously finished third here on this golf course in the past. Like, there's reason to believe that Grant Forrest can win now that we've seen him do it. Prototypically, maybe not the guy that we would sort of focus on in terms of stats wise. I think that's kind of to your point that, the consistency is not there. There's nothing to really build it off, but just an inner belief that someone can elevate their game and win when there's so many question marks. I mean, if John Rahm and Tommy Fleetwood don't turn up, and to be honest, if John Rahm doesn't turn up, I'm not too worried about Tommy Fleetwood, to be honest. I know that could be a bit of a hot take come Sunday, but like at 8-1, I was never, even in his prime, I wasn't going to touch Tommy Fleetwood, and he's pretty far away from that at the moment. So then really you had kind of Eddie Pepperell, I thought was a decent price, but couldn't get there. So is there much ahead of Grant Forrest that you'd be worried about? Probably not.
No, I liked Eddie a lot too. I think Eddie arguably has like the best form of anybody on the DP World Tour still right now. Like, I truly believe that. I just didn't love what is necessary from a competing short game, I just 28s was right. I mean, there's nothing. If those top two don't show up, like the prices will be really tough, to swallow in this event. But exactly. At least we get a little bit of a cushion in some of these guys. But we go ahead.
I think with Pepperell, it was more like if he was going to get it done, he'd have got it done by now. Like he's had Wentworth, he's had the Dunhill links, he's had the kind of Kazoo events and things like that. Like he's a real kind of UK and Ireland kind of guy, and if he was going to win, I think he'd have done that. So at 28-1, I thought it was a bit hard to swallow.
Yeah, and with that, we jump deeper into odds. I'll pass to you. I think we're still seeing 70s on this golfer, a friend of ours, I would say, because of
Yeah.
a late season hit last year.
Yes, JB Hansen is a guy. I was going to bring the background up again, but I thought that was a bit on the nose when he hasn't won yet. But look, he's been awful this season. Like there is just no getting away from that. I think that when he finally got that win on the Joburg Open, then followed up in Dubai last year, like we really thought that JB Hansen was going to kick on and be the player that we thought he was going to be after graduating from the Challenge Tour in 2018. It just hasn't happened, and I don't really know the reason. I'm not going to pretend that I do know why. I mean, it's based on the fact that his ball striking hasn't been there, and that's what he relies on. But I don't know why he struggled. Like, it'll probably come out at the end of the season that he had some underlying things going on, or whatever. Like, we just don't know half the time, apart from the big guys, really. So, what I do like, he has had 2 top 14 place finishes in his last 4 starts, which is really promising when he'd only had one kind of top 10 all season when he finished 5th at the Stein City Championship. Stein City Championship in in South Africa, where there's again a little bit of that kind of altitude. Then you look at the fact that one of his best finishes over the last 4 starts was at Cran-Cercier, top 14 finishing there. That maybe this is just kind of his gig at the moment, and 4th and 24th place finishes at this golf course kind of back that up as well. So the ball striking numbers haven't been where I wanted them to be to really get excited about JB Hansen, but again, like the upside of him is a win, and he's done it twice over the last 2 years, and I believe he can do it again.
Yeah, always excited for JB at a birdie fest. I think he can be quite interesting. So you mentioned Tristan Lawrence kind of being your guy when you open the week. I am incredibly shocked that we're still getting Sammy Valenaki at these prices. I know we keep going back to wacky, and I kind of jumped off that bandwagon on our show a few weeks ago when I was pulled back into some of the corollary courses you mentioned on the show. Like, which event would that have been for Sammy? So that would have been the Open de France, Kazoo, right?
Yep.
Where you pulled in some corollaries after we saw him peter out in the second round at Wentworth, not play well at the Italian Open. Okay, so you see that happening. In the Italian Open, that second round was much better, ends up finishing 20th at the Kazoo that week. And then he ends up at the Alfred Dunhill, a sneaky 22nd place finish last week. Now, what I find incredibly interesting here, when I kind of pull into some of the information, if you can see, Data Golf did a good job of kind of separating out what they deemed the wave splits last week, because there were significant wave splits, right? We're aware of kind of how that shook out. And if you look into it, so Sammy, of the guys that teed up last week, so he, even though he finished 22nd, his wave split difference, they ended up grading him, of the golfers that are in the field this week, tied for 3rd in regards to his performance last week. Now that's just guys. There's not everybody who played last week this, but for example, if I do compare him to Grant Forrest, who ended up finishing 10th last week, they have Valamaki's performance a full stroke better over the event, or I guess not a full stroke, a 10th of stroke. But either way, a 22nd place finish is getting graded better than a 10th place finish due to those wave splits for Valimaki. So it's incredibly eye-opening, one, to me. And then 2, for him, when you look at the past 20 rounds of form, you grade it, it's literally, you zoom out, you had those missed cuts. We loved him playing the time before when he was, kind of lighting it up at the Kazoo, doing well at the Scottish, finishing 4th at the BMW, the Irish Open, played well. Like, Sammy has had a really good stretch of golf. They grade his form 4th in the field. Rahm, Fleetwood, Pepperell, and then Sammy Valimaki over the last 20 rounds. And we're getting him at 70-1. And where does Sammy excel? He does well off the tee, and he's a great putter. I think it's a perfect combination for Sammy overall here this event. So I am salivating at these prices for him at 70-1. And then, I mean, he hasn't been the worst in Spain when he's teed up. Nothing inside the top 10, but a few top 25s for him. So I just think everything is there for Valimaki, and I do not want to quit it.
He did have a top 10 at Valderrama.
Oh, you're
So,
right. Yeah, that was longer than our time. Look at that.
Whilst it was a different test altogether, right? But the nuances of the greens, I don't necessarily know that the green stuff is exactly the same, but just the area, how hot it is, whatever. I think with Valimaki, the interesting thing with him is I still don't think we quite know what he is. And what I mean by that is like he's kind of turned his hand to different places all the time. He's won in the Mars, played well in Wales. You could argue that he just likes playing in windy conditions and things like that. But we've seen him play well at Wentworth. We've seen him play well at Valderrama. We've seen him play well at the BMW International. Like there's genuine upside on someone when you don't know too much about them. And I think it's been one, he's not been around as that long. Like he seems like he's been around for ages, but hasn't really. And then when you think about the fact that he's lost kind of a year or whatever through bad form or injuries or anything like that, like I think there's still plenty of things to figure out about Valimaki. So whilst I didn't really get there, I can certainly see why. I don't have any negatives to say about Valimaki.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited for him. I would say this next golfer we are both interested in as well seems to be kind of trending in a lot of the same directions you mentioned as Tristan Lawrence. I guess a South African connection there. I know kind of he's been Coley's headline too this week, and I could absolutely see the reasonings why we can get. I love betting Daniel Van Tonder. I think he's got awesome upside for what we know his background is. So kind of go in if you can for just kind of DVT's reasoning here and what we've seen out of him leading in.
Yeah, so for me, like Van Tonder and Yannick Paul were certainties I knew that you'd pick. And that's not to say that you're predictable. And it's just that I know that what you were going to sort of focus on this week, because what most people focus on, and how they grade out for you. But to kind of add to it, he was 6th in strokes gained approach last week. And he actually led the field in tee to green as well. Now, to your point, like, you've got to factor in wave splits, you've got to factor in courses on certain days, etc.
And those strokes gains were weird a little bit, right? Because like some people had 4 rounds and some people had 1 and 2 and 3. It was a little odd. So grain of salt, agree.
Yeah, I think you have to worry about it a little bit. I've used it as supporting reasons rather than the reasons to back people. But ultimately, if I like Tristan Lawrence and I like, look at the kind of Arnaud's knee neighbour, like Daniel Van Tonder's the cheaper, option to that, and maybe not quite as good is maybe the fair assessment. But whether it's not as good or just not as consistent, I don't know. Like I think there's incredible upside for Daniel Van Tonder, and someone that I think can definitely win. So it's not someone I'm incredibly confident about, but it's someone I think offers a really good value. And if we're talking about people that play well in South Africa, then he's been excellent. 8 wins there since 2014.
Yeah,
and
he
three
hadn't had
playoff losses.
yeah, I think the cheaper version of those guys and that skill set. Again, I'm trying not to pigeonhole myself in the skill set. It's kind of being a little bit price sensitive too, and finding some of those guys that are popping in form. But yeah, he's somebody who can show up and win out of nowhere and has done that. And competed in Kenya at elevation too, right? I mean, that was I guess won in Kenya, right? So yeah, a big fan of Van Tonder. I've got one more. I think you've got 2 left. You got one more in this range before your long shot time you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, so Marcel Seam for me, I thought was someone that I thought interesting more than excited about. I mean, I find it difficult to get too excited about Marcel Seam when he's been around for X amount of years, but he seems to have a little bit of a renaissance. I think we kind of talked about him sort of midway through the season. You look at it, he's made his last 4 cuts. He's ranked 8th, 18th, 8th and 29th tee to green, 9th, 21st, 15th and 20th in approach in those events. So the last 4 cuts he's made, he's missed one in between. But ultimately that leaves him like top 7 in both categories over the last few weeks. He's won the Dunhill Championship at Hansen Golf Clubs in Johannesburg. He's finished 2nd at Crown Cercier. And he's got multiple top 10s in Spain, which you'd expect from someone that's been on tour for as long as he has and been to the levels he's had. He's played here twice, 2005 and 2019, and finished 43rd and 63rd, which on the face of it sounds pretty disappointing, right? But back in 2005, he was 14th for the halfway stage. Rounds of 70, 71 kind of took it out of him, which you think 70 and 71 dropping down from 15th to 43rd seems pretty dramatic, right? So that kind of suggests to me that there was a bit more to be offered. 2019, 3rd after day 1, 6th at the halfway stage, and I seem to remember there being a little bit of competitive rust at the time. Like it'd been a while since he'd been in that kind of heat of the battle. Obviously, John Rahm is winning that week. So just maybe just get caught up in the moment, which is strange for someone of a veteran presence. But just the fact that he's striking the ball so well, we know what he's about, and the fact that he's kind of played well here in flashes. I just thought Marcel Sim was interesting. I don't love the price. Like, I think there's better golfers. Obviously, Tonder was the same price at one point. A guy that you're going to come on to in a sec is similar in that respect. But I thought he was worth mentioning at the very least.
Yeah. I always enjoy rooting for Marcel Sim as well. So yeah, I'll round out my last selection here for me, and it's a golfer I would say we've been fond of throughout our time on our show here, just because of the flashes he shows. And Daniel Gavins, for me, being triple digits is kind of eye popping because we saw him win obviously last year, coming off of he was a Challenge Tour player at the time, right? He had come in at 21st, 8th, 9th in his last 3 Challenge Tour events, wins the ISPS Honda, and then just kind of has a lackluster year, except with multiple times popping kind of in just random events with really, really good irons. And when those do happen, like his 3 best iron performances came in a span of 5 weeks last year. 6th at the Alfred Dunhill last year and this year. And then he ended up with that 11th at Valderrama last year. So we talk about kind of a Spanish connection. And then at the end of the year, he had really good irons. And again, he's come out this year. He had a top 6 at the Kenya Open, took elevation there. He popped then again in Spain with his best irons of the season with a T13 there. And he'd been relatively dull for a good amount of time. But what's interesting now, again, to me, is we see him with trending irons. So we look at his last few events. So even though he missed the cut at the Kazoo Open, he was still gaining irons. 2 weeks prior to that, Wentworth made the cut, strong irons against that field. Now, again, we have to take it with a grain of salt. Last week, really, really good irons. And worst case, if we had to go traditional stats, was top 5 in greens in regulation. So I think there's just a lot with Daniel Gavins when I look at trends and he's somebody who has popped and then won when he's popped. I like that. And Spanish connection, elevation, some success. I just think he can do that at a good number here. I like 110 to 1.
Yeah, so you obviously already mentioned the fact that he was 11th in Valderrama, and he was actually 46th the time before that as well, but was 15th at the 54-hole stage. You've already spoken about the 13th at the Catalunya Championship last time he was in Spain, but he was 4th at the halfway stage there as well. My only reservation with Gavins is and it's what makes him appealing, and it's what makes him hard to bet, in the sense that he's appealing because he's always a relatively decent number because he's so difficult to predict. But by the same token, he's a decent number because he could easily just miss the cut. And it's just one of those ones that he doesn't necessarily, we sort of say with these players, like, as soon as they can find a putter, they'll contend. And it doesn't seem to be with Gavins, like he can just all of a sudden lose his ball striking when his putting comes back. So the only concern with him, but you're getting the triple digit prices because of that. And ultimately his skill set matches up really well to the golf course. And we know, again, the upside is a win. We know the form is good. So I have no problems with Daniel Gavins at all.
Perfect. I want to send a reminder for all of our audio listeners, for podcasters. You can find us on any of the audio formats, daily fantasy sports picks and bets at the mix on Mayo Media Network. Again, rate, review, subscribe goes a long way for us. Leave a comment. YouTube, you can like us on there on the Mayo Media Network page. It really goes a long way to supporting us and continue as we close out the DP World Tour season. Tom, you got one last selection for us. Can you give it to us? And it's a little Spanish fire, right?
Yeah, it's Alejandro Canizares. And I think, to me, like, you almost want the Spaniard here, right? Like, the first 4 home in 2019 were all Spanish. Last year, Rafael Correa beats Adrian Alves. I feel like it would be a disservice to not have a Spaniard on the card. Now, of course, you look at Adrian Alves. I thought he was a relatively decent bet to look at, even with the kind of shortened prices. You should be looking in the 40-50 to 1 range for players in that. But ultimately, I kind of landed on Canizares. Now, again, take it a little bit of a pinch of salt, but first in strokes gained approach last week at 16th tee to green. Even if they're like a little bit wacky, like he obviously hit them decent enough to kind of perform up there, right? Then you look at the fact that, again, he's another one like JB Hansen that's just been pretty poor all season. But when you look at where he's posted just 1 top 10 this season, Cran Cercier, he finished 7th. and that was somewhere that he's also finished 4th and 9th in the past. He's got a 3rd place finish at the Nedbank, I think it was in South Africa. Just all of that, the fact that he elevates his game like massively in Spain, like he's a 3-time runner-up in his home country. He's got a 17th place finish in his golf course. Everything kind of lines up to me for Canizares to be a massive long shot. Now, if I said that it's hard to predict what Daniel Gavins will do off a good week, it's definitely difficult to predict what Alejandro Canizares is going to do off any given week. I seem to remember there was a little bit of traction about him at Wentworth because he struck the ball well and had some decent form there. But like, I would proceed with caution in terms of he could kill DraftKings lineup. He could certainly fail with, but at 175 to 1, 200 to 1, he was sort of earlier on. I think that's a great price for a long shot.
Yeah, I think it's a fun one too. We definitely had a stretch there. There's one golfer I want to mention, and it's only because he just got into the field. I didn't see any prices, but I am very curious where they price up the other Paul brother. I didn't see anything on Jeremy Paul. He just got into the field. So when he does get priced up, if he is, I don't know, he could be 80 to 1. He could be 200 to 1. A player that had success in the Korn Ferry Tour, I'm very interested in if you get a price around Canizares like that. I'll be intrigued to see where they end up booking him at this week. But
and I think you would get a decent enough price on Jeremy Paul, not because he doesn't deserve to be a good price, but because Yannick Paul has done it over here recently. But like, Jeremy's just been on the Korn Ferry Tour, right? So there's unknowns about him. But when you look at 14th in Utah, 3rd at the Ascendant, 7th at the Advent Health Championship, 5th at the Simmons Bank Championship, 16th in Knoxville, like, we've seen so many times how well Korn Ferry Tour form can translate into these events. He's played on the Challenge Tour in the past, like, he knows how to play in Europe. So whilst I think obviously there's a massive price difference for a reason in terms of the two brothers, I think the upside is, I mean, how much better is Yannick Paul to Jeremy Paul? I don't know the answer to that at the moment.
Yeah, I'll be intrigued if we get some deeper numbers. And like Paul Bargnon, I mean, he was as bad as it could have probably had a year on the PGA Tour, and he came out and contended in France. So with that, though, Tom, I'll have you lead us, or I guess close us with your card to start, and then I'll follow you.
Yeah, so for me, Tristan Lawrence, I think it's still 40 to 1 about. JB Hansen 70 to 1. Daniel Van Tonder with you. Is he still 100 to 1, Sky, over there?
80s over here now.
80 for Daniel Van Tonder. There is a little bit of interest in Marcel Seam, but not quite sure what to do there yet. And Alejandro Canizares for a long shot, 175 to 200 to 1 for me.
Awesome. I am on Yannick Paul, 37 to 1. Grant Forrest, 40 to 1. Tristan Lawrence, 40 to 1. Sammy Valenaki, 70 to 1. Danny Van Tonder, 80 to 1. And Daniel Gavins, 110 to 1. So puts a bow on us for the week. Next week, man, I love Valderrama. Valderrama is just such a fun event. And I mean, some of these guys, this is a little bit of a warm up. We talk about off the tee and short game. Next week, gear up, because that is what is necessary. So hopefully some life out of these guys, or some bigger numbers on guys that we like, but always love Valderrama.
Yeah, no, looking forward to that one. I think the fact that we got through that whole podcast without calling Tristan Lawrence Thirsty Lawrence is pretty impressive, considering Pat's tendency to call him that. But look, it's a great week. I enjoy these kind of events. Like, I feel like we've had those higher level events, and I'm kind of rambling a bit here. The strong field events with some really high quality names in it that you want to back an outsider because of the value, but the win equity probably isn't there. Like, you've got two standouts in Jon Rahm and Tommy Fleetwood, but I would not necessarily be too worried about Tommy Fleetwood, and Jon Rahm can't just win every time. I know he does sort of suggest he can, but we've seen when he had a chance to win here not just last year and blew it. So just the way he's been playing, his attitude towards some things this year, I can't go anywhere near him at 2 to 1 or 3 to 1.
Yeah, hopefully it gives us, that the opportunity and the price, and we take advantage of it. So, but I would say thank you again to everybody for your support. We appreciate you, and let's hit a couple Spanish winners, back-to-back winners in Spain for us. It'll go a long way to close out the year. So again, Absolutely. Thank you all. We appreciate you, and we'll catch you at Valderrama.